WGSN-DB Going Solo Network welcomes you to award-nominated relationship internet radio talk show, Going Solo with Cece. Host Cece Schatz is a speaker, author, blogger, and the leading transitional divorce and dating coach with My Friends Connect and Going Solo Next Step. Now, together, let's join Cece.
This is Cece with Going Solo, and you are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. And we are so pleased to have with us today Tricia Andreassen. And it's so great to have you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
You're calling from North Carolina. We had the hurricane there recently, and it was a crazy experience for everyone. So we hope that everyone in your state is doing okay. So we're pleased to know that it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, my church actually did some fundraising this past weekend because the way it came in, there was more flooding in North Carolina and then that coastal of Virginia that we were unexpected. But I live outside of the Charlotte area, so we didn't have a lot of that. But we did have family members come here and stay this weekend because they were from Charleston. So I'm sending all good vibes and healing to everybody out there who may be going through this rebuilding process, which we all are familiar with in life, right?
Absolutely. So we just want to do a little shout out to them because we know that even though it wasn't as bad as everyone was predicting, it's still bad enough because people are out of their homes or having to rebuild. And so we want to make sure that we do our part with extending our well wishes and hoping that and anything that we can do to contribute would be great. So let's move on with this healing process because this is why I have you on the show. You are an inspirational speaker. You have a #1 best-selling author, a spiritual growth coach. You help women really attach into the warrior of themselves. And I just think that is so awesome because, and I know that you do focus on women. That is one of your areas. However, I know that you can help men too, because there are men that are going through that transition of relationship loss that need some help. So both men and women, it's a real difficult time for them. And I applaud you for what you do. So tell us, how did you get into being a spiritual growth coach?
It is interesting that you mentioned that I do work with women and at the same time about men, because literally my relationships with men have come through in coaching that I was not expecting. And I believe it was because they feel safe possibly with me in showing their vulnerability, where I had one who lost his wife to cancer, another one who went through a separation. And in the middle of the separation, his wife passed away of a stroke and having to find him his whole identity again because they've been married since college and had gone through that rough patch, and we're trying to navigate that. So it's interesting. I think there's commonalities between men and women. In relation to how did I get into this, everyone has a story. And so I definitely believe what Marcus Buckingham wrote in Discover Your Strengths when the Gallup poll did their investigation on how people discover their strengths. And one thing that had stood out to me, Cece, was he said, is it that we become more of who we are as we get older or evolve, or do we change? And what I have found in my personal process is we become more of who we are at our core, that possibly we were created in the very, very beginning. And through our goal setting or our definition of success and so forth, we possibly can lose our way. And that's definitely what happened to me. I definitely had a calling on me as early as my teens. I was a camp counselor at 14, and the assistant counselor was 19. And it was really bizarre because I was the younger one. However, they chose me because I didn't know that myself at that time. But one of the girls that was in one of my sessions was 12 years old, and she would not eat. And I was very, very concerned. And of course, me going into a sophomore year of high school, Cece, I had no experience in this, right? And I ended up helping her through that, and I brought it to the director's attention, and he was like, "You're just a kid. What do you know?" But it was in that moment, in working with that little girl and that child and seeing the challenges of bulimia right there and anorexia, that my heart started just feeling called for it. So that I, ran my marketing and advertising business, and I worked in real estate, and just through doing leadership and so forth, that was a path that was running. But I will tell you that I was called back into this very strongly about 8 years ago when I started writing my first book, and I was going through my own healing of the process and really finding out who I was, because my identity had been wrapped up in business. And my identity wasn't my business. My business was a vehicle, but it wasn't really truly my spirit. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that's how I've evolved into it. And so what's happened is people from all walks of life have come to me, from running a company and a CEO and a mom, to one who's gone through a divorce of 25 years and trying to find the new chapter of her life and really losing her identity and raising a family, to people who have lost their spouse to cancer or divorce and wanting to reinvent themselves or reintroduce themselves to the world. So I believe that's why I'm here today, is because somebody's listening and saying, okay, I'm possibly going back into this single world, or I'm going through some type of transition, and I'm having a challenge with it, but I'm holding on.
Totally get that. I totally get what you're saying, and I love at the beginning when you were talking about, are we now, as we get older, who we really were at the beginning? And it's funny because after my divorce, I went through a lot of problems, just trying to just get through the divorce, the financial, just all the ups and downs and all of that stuff. But then when I started to get my joy back, that's what I call it, getting your joy back. When I started to find my own sense of happiness, my own sense of self again, my father said to me, he said, "Oh, you're just like you were in high school." And I was amazed by that. And that's always stuck in my head, because I thought, well, who was I all these years? Who was I then? And I was actually a wife and a mother. And I kind of lost my identity along the way, trying to build them up, help them, nurture them, get them going in their careers, their life, and all of that. I kind of put mine on the back and put it on hold. Although I was, not unhappy with many moments in my life with my children and my family. But when I started to make that transition, and I kind of sense a little bit of that with yourself, when I started making that transition, I started realizing, who am I? Well, what does make me tick? What does make me happy? And then I started realizing that what I'm doing now today, helping others, is truly a tremendous passion. It's a driving force in me. That's something I just can't put down. I mean, I could go and do another career and probably make very good money, but I really love what I do. And it's not about finances. It's about helping others and getting them through. So I can see that transition for you. I can see when you were younger and you were there helping someone and realized that there was a need to help someone. And now you're actually doing it. You're really stepping forward into your life. And so I love what you do, what you represent, growth in individuals, because I think we all need to continue growing no matter where we're at in life.
And, it's difficult sometimes to embrace the growth. At the same time, I remember I went to an event with Tony Robbins, and he said, there's a primary question that always runs in our brain. And it could be, how could I be? Why am I not good enough? Or why do I always seem to mess this up? Or there's questions. There is a primary question that runs in our mind. And it was in that experience that I literally programmed myself. And when I talk to people, I still will do it. I do it every day. And I'll say, well, the gift of this is, so even in the most challenging or difficult situation, I'll say, well, the gift that's come out of this is. And so I've learned to frame that, and it's been helpful. And it's interesting what you said about becoming who you are, because I remember I've been married now almost 17 years, and we have a son who's 15. But I went through a marriage, was married for a little right at the anniversary of our 4-year anniversary. Literally, I said that I wanted a divorce, and that was hard because I found he was having a relationship with someone else, and it was difficult. But in that year, I went through a miscarriage and a divorce all in that year. That was very, very hard. So fast forward to getting myself back on my feet. And this is just really crazy because I was like 28, 29 at the time. And I know Rooms to Go is more general, but keep in mind, I was in my 20s. And so I went to Rooms to Go, right? And I walked around and I went, what is Tricia like? Wonder what sofa would like be me. And I was walking around the store going, what is me? You know, and it really hit home because what I had realized is I had tried to become so much for other people that I forgot actually what I really would even want to follow, or, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
It was in that moment, rooms to go, when I'm sitting there going, wow. So the gift out of this pain and this new chapter of my life is I can rediscover myself and reinvent and grow in the places that I want to grow. And it was in just choosing that furniture that I had a real aha moment.
That's great. And, you know, a lot of people, I think if they just stop and think a little bit, they will have that same type of moment if they're really looking to move forward in life. And so I think the show today is really super because both you and I have experienced that. We've experienced being in a place where we're not quite sure exactly where we want to be or who we are. And when we say that, some people look at me a little like, oh, you're crazy. You know, what do you mean by that? But it's true. You live your life for other people. And that's quite all right. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, my mother did it. And she was just the most wonderful person. And she was very happy with her life. But I don't know. I think there is something underlying with people such as yourself and mine that there's a bigger purpose in life for us. And when we don't achieve that, it's something that constantly comes up to us. It surfaces. And I think a lot of people out there feel the same thing, but they just kind of put that lid back on. And what we're trying to do, you and I, with growth and being able to expose them and say, you know what, you can have it all. You know, you don't have to give up yourself in life to be able to really create happiness for yourself. And so I think it's great.
One thing I've learned is, this is going to sound really wild, and I'm okay with that, is to release the crazy. Because I think that's why we put lids back on, is because our emotions, and I will not say that for somebody, I will say it for myself, that I would have a fear of being rejected or not accepted. And so I would not necessarily go for my dream at that moment because I didn't want people to think she's crazy or her dreams are lofty or whatever. And it was only until I was listening to this guy who's a minister, but he's also a comedian and a playwright. He's amazing. His name is Don Gray. And he was like, it's all right, release your crazy. And he said, because he said, it was in my gift of singing and my comedic work that I've been able to blend it all together in my speaking. And I thought, wow, somebody crazy like me. I love this, you know. And I believe the more vulnerable that we are and the more we surround ourselves with people who are supportive of whatever your heart calls you for, is where healing really truly can begin. And so one of the things that I have worked through, and I really actually believe that my spirit is calling me to put something together, or a book or a class on it of some kind, so I'm just processing it, but is the journaling process. I began journaling when I was in my 20s, and it has been very, very not only healing, but eye-opening, because it brings things to the surface of things that we need to be aware of. And I will tell you, it has made such an impact in my life, Cece, that when I was single, and I was in my condo in Lake Norman with my new sofa and my chair. I really started thinking about who did I want as a partner in my life, as a soulmate, as a husband. And I literally wrote down the list. I wish I had that list today but I remember what I wrote. And I wrote someone who is confident in themselves, so they feel like they're not intimidated by a strong woman with goals, comfortable in their identity. Someone who says, I love you out loud to their father. I mean, this was a purposeful list. Now, I will tell you, I'm just going to say it. I could really date actively, and I dated attractive men, right? The thing is, though, is I realized that did not need to be on my list. Still today, I will chat with women and they'll say, well, I don't want to, No. What's his hair? Oh, is it going to be a little thin? No, forget it. Now, I'm saying this bluntly, and I know that that could be hurtful for a man hearing that, but we need to be the truth, because I know men will say the same thing about necessarily maybe not the perfect size, right? So what I had to do is I had to really get real and authentic with myself of, in 20 years, is that going to matter? What is truly going to matter in my life and in my relationships and with the love that I really want? And I remember meeting Kurt, and we met on America Online, by the way. So for any oldies that had America Online. And we didn't have this long dating scenario, but we chatted online and we ended up meeting, and our date lasted about 10 hours. I will tell you, when he sent his picture to me, I was like, oh, he's a little thin on top, but boy, he has a beautiful smile. Like, it's just a beautiful smile. And I remember going out with him. It was probably around the 3rd to the 5th date that he was out hanging plants outside on the townhouse patio that overlooked the main channel of Lake Norman. And he had his shirt off and so forth. And I looked out the window down at him as he was hanging up plants. And I was like, you know, he doesn't have the perfect muscles. He doesn't have the perfect hair. But what he has is this perfect soul and this beautiful spirit within him. And when we went on a hike, he told his dad, who just recently passed last month, I love you, Dad. And he said it in front of me. And it was in those, and I have chills right now thinking about that, because, oh my goodness, I just feel like the spirit just on me right now, because we can be so intentional at who we want to attract for our life in every way, not only romantically, but in friendships and with business. If we're just mindful and intentional and let down some of those limiting beliefs that we have from the past into where we are.
I believe that, and I talk to a lot of people that are in the dating stages, and it's really the core, bring it down to our core values, what's really, truly important to us, to be able to relate and connect. You know, that's what's important. It's not about so much, you know, I know physical attraction is important, because I think, you know, we kind of probably all need that, a little bit of excitement. But the reality is at the end of the day, are you going to be able to weather the time? And you're not going to be able to weather the time if you don't have the same core values. And so I think you hit the mark absolutely with that. Take a quick break, and everyone can grab a glass of water or wine or whatever they're drinking, and we'll come right back with some more great information. This is Cece with Going Solo with WGSN-DB, and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to the show. This is Cece with Going Solo, and you are listening to WGSN-DB. Wow, we had a hot first part of the show, so if you missed it, you definitely want to catch the podcast. But what we're talking about is growth, spiritual growth, growth within yourself, really kind of understanding a little bit more of your core values, your passion, what makes you tick. And today we have a fantastic guest with us. Her name is Tricia Andreassen. She is a spiritual speaker. She has a #1 bestseller author. She's a spiritual coach, growth coach, helping men and women really finding the warrior within themselves. And so welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's really wonderful being here.
I just love you. I think you're great. I love what you stand for. I like how you're helping people, because really it changes them. And I love the idea that, as you said, what gift, you know, as we go through our lives, we find all of these, sometimes they're roadblocks, you know, we feel like they're like a bump in the road, but they're actually gifts that we have to step over and grasp sometimes. And I love that. But I love how you look at life as an opportunity. And I just think that is a super thing. You know, so often in my own life, a lot of things that I thought were really horrible to me have turned out to be a true learning experience. Now, sometimes, you know, they are hard to pick up. The pieces are a little bit harder to pick up, but they're ones that maybe in my own way, not realizing it at the time, I let that happen to me. And so it's a lesson that I've learned now. So I love what you said about the gifts.
And I'm not saying that there are moments that aren't not a struggle. 2 nights ago, I was in bed processing something, and I was crying. And I called my mom, and that can be a double-edged sword. I love her to death. But she was like, well, this is, and I said, Mom, stop. I don't really need or want advice right now. I don't want advice right now. I just need someone to listen and to love me through where my brain is. It was amazing, though, in that safety to be able to chat through that and then write my feelings through that. And 20 minutes later, there was an opportunity that presented itself to actually solve that issue. And so I want to share right now with the listeners that spiritual growth is not a destination. It is an involvement, and you're going to have those ups and those downs. I think the secret is, if you will, and you heard me stutter through that because I want to make sure I'm mindful of what I say, is the secret is building the resilience to bounce back in those moments, getting back to the core and what strategies you can put in place. There's definitely a DNA behind being resilient and being able to process through to come through the other side. That is what helps me as well. I can share with you some of those processes if you like, or have three pieces of it.
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
One thing is to be what I call, and this is my word for the year, is mindful. So what I mean being mindful is being aware of, number one, what am I personally in control of right now? Because we don't want to go to release first, because it's hard to get things off your plate until you realize going, okay, well, what can I work on? I know, because I had a coach work with me through that. She was like, what do you want off your plate? And I'm like, I have no idea. And then I had to circle back around to, what do I really want to have more of? So what we can control is we can control our actions and what we put forth. We can control our tone and our words of what we put forth, because once words are out, they cannot be taken back. And words also have power, so they can manifest greatly into other areas of your life. You can also be mindful of where you put your energy. Do you want to put your energy into fighting that obstacle with the mindfulness that maybe that's not going to get the end result that really needs to be, or fighting that energy where it doesn't need to be? And then also be mindful of really what you're putting forth out there in your actions. And I might have said that in actions, so I apologize if I repeated that. But it's before you take action, and I don't mean this as a stalling technique, because action is important. You have to be mindful of what you want to achieve from that. The second thing is, what do I need to release? One of the biggest things that I see of releasing is in relationships is forgiveness. Because what happens when we go through a divorce or a loss or someone passing away is that we first get angry, and we get angry possibly at the person, even though it's a situation. We get angry at ourselves. And the thing is to be able to move forward and to find resilience, you've got to be willing to work through forgiving, not only yourself, but also others. And I will tell you, the forgiveness is hard. I have forgiven a lot. I actually was in a situation where I was abused as a child. And I remember going to the funeral 3 years ago. And the man who did that to me, and I know, Cece, this is very raw, but the man who did me was like 91 years old and still alive. I could not sit through the funeral. Now, here I am teaching resilience, spiritual growth, and so forth. And still, I actually walked out of the funeral because my energy, I chose not to be in that room. What I realized is I can choose my environment, which is great, right? I can control the environment that I'm in. What I also took out as a gift from that is I had not fully forgiven. Now, does forgiveness mean a pass? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because there's accountability, there's boundaries, there are expectations. What I will say, though, is acting in forgiveness for yourself and releasing it to a higher power is absolutely important, because if you don't, it will cause just this endless cancer within that does not serve for your strength. And why put them, and that taps your energy. And resilience, it has that. So that's number 2 is forgiveness. And number 3 is getting the chatter out of your brain. I'm a huge advocate for writing things down. Even I was so happy and grateful today to be talking to a gentleman. He's actually leading a men's retreat this weekend. And he says, oh, I hate to tell you this, but guess what? I actually journaled. And yes, it worked. And I loved hearing that from a man, because we think sometimes that men don't journal, but they do. And out of that manifested some teachings that he was going to bring from his personal experiences. So that's where you find the gift, is also in journaling process. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little messy. You can start with the sentence of, I am so frustrated right now because ... Or, I can't believe that this happened to me today ... It's when you lead the first sentence with an emotion, whether it's happy, frustrated, sad, angry, disappointed. When you start the first sentence with the emotion that needs to come out and just let your pen fly, it's the way to do that. My mother-in-law was here with me a few days after the loss of her husband and some emotional issues. I mean, we're talking about her soulmate of 62 years, and they were married 60 years. And every day he was like, you're so beautiful. And they're from Denmark, which is why my last name is Andreassen. So they'd call each other Scat for darling. So you can imagine when she has been going through this, that she was like, I just don't even know if I can make it anymore. I don't know if I can live anymore. Now, for the daughter-in-law to hear that, and again, I have chills thinking about that, I was like, okay, it's easier to coach a stranger when it's someone that you are emotionally connected to. It can be difficult, right? And so when I actually went out to Walmart and I got her environment, because I knew I could control the environment that she was in. So I put some books by her nightstand. I got a little dish and I put Hershey Kisses in it. I went and cut some fresh flowers from my garden and put them into a little vase. I bought her a little journal that she could write in. And I bought her a book and I put that on her bed as a gift. And I wrote on the inside of the journal, I hope that this can help you get your thoughts out. Well, Cece, it was a couple of days later and I was working, but my husband had gone out on the deck to check on her. And she says, I'm using this journal. And I'm finding that I am really angry, but I'm angry more with myself than with anyone else. And that was so beautiful because she had never was able to have that clarity. And I was so proud of her, Cece, in that moment, because it was later that evening that she picked up the phone and called her brother and said, I want to go back home into my house and I want to be able to address these things to move me forward. And that was literally 72 hours after her making that statement that she didn't know if she could go on. So that's probably tying up, and I wasn't even planning on sharing that story. But again, I feel like there's somebody out there that's listening that it's not just about, dating. They've lost somebody. It could be a close relationship, a friendship, separation that they're having. And that's what and this is where I'm owning it as far as my belief in God. And I hope that's okay to share, but definitely He's given me those spiritual gifts. And right now I literally can feel my heart hurting for one of your listeners that is going through this. And I can't even explain it. And I've never said that ever on a radio show. And I've done a lot of radio shows. So I don't get it. I'm just going to release it. But if you are feeling that way and hurting, I encourage you to please look at who is in your environment. If you need to step back from one of your family members because they are infusing upon you their perceptions or opinions and things that are not ready for you to address yet or not in alignment with your core, self-care, please do that. And then look at your environment. Look at what can be around you to lift you up. It could be as simple as finding a fresh flower or making a cup of tea that smells really good and sitting with a favorite blanket. These are the things that you can bring into your environment while you're going through the healing process to provide that resilience for you. And definitely, if you haven't done it yet, pick up a journal. I encourage you. to start in that process.
Tricia,
Wow, I wasn't expecting my heart to come out like that.
This is great information. The thing is as we're younger, we go to school, we learn different tools, different things to be able to educate us, be able to get us through life, career, or whatever, make money. We learn all these different things, but what we don't learn is after a relationship loss, how do we deal with it? How do we move forward with that? Those things are not taught to us. They're not really experienced yet. So here we're trying to grasp what to do. And it's so great to have someone like yourself to be able to share various different tips and tools. And I love the whole concept of our shows, because that's what it's all about, is to be able to give the listeners what they need at that moment, to be able to understand that they have certain things that they have to start doing for themselves that will help them to be able to move forward in their life, to be able to grow in their life. And so I think it's great. I love what you've said today. I truly do. So over again, what you mentioned, and please, everyone, listen to this broadcast a couple times, because I think you're going to get more and more out of it each time that you hear it. But the 3 different tools that she was giving you was really deal with what you can control at the moment, and take in consideration the actions, the words, and the energy. The second was, what do you need to release? And is forgiveness one of them? So why don't you think about that a little bit more? What do you need to release today? And then getting the chatter out of your head, that negative thoughts sometimes that we have for ourselves, we don't set the boundaries that we need to do, or we beat ourselves up. So getting that negative chatter out of your head is so vital. So thank you so much for all the information that you've given us today. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and it's really blessed my heart, because this is my life passion. I sold my company last year to dedicate my heart the rest of my life to this work. So thank you so much for having me.
I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and I know that you're changing lives out there each and every day. So now, how do we get a hold of you if we'd like for you to be our spiritual coach?
You can reach me on my website. It's www.Tricia, Tricia, Andreassen, and that's Andreassen, like Andrea, and then SSEN. You can also follow me on Facebook at Be Unstoppable Now. So that's really easy. So just facebook.com/Be Unstoppable Now. And I'd love to help you, even if it's just a message, even if you don't want to hire it at this time, but you just need an encouraging word or an encouraging song. I just want you to know that I'm there for you first and foremost, because that is really what my heart calls for me to do. I can't even tell you how much I'm feeling it on my heart of your work and your calling. It's just beautiful.
Oh, well,
so,
thank you. Well, I am so pleased to have you on the show. I do know that you are definitely changing lives each and every day.
I have a book coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'm just waiting to hear from the global distributors on it. It's called Resilience in the Storm. And it will be available on Amazon, which is easy for you to get, and also accessible off my website. But this is truly some of the things that we shared about today about resilience and working through those parts of your life. And it's just not only an inspiring read, but also ways for you to journal through it. I welcome anyone to learn about that at resiliencinthestorm.com.
Oh, that's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I'll definitely get the book myself. And I hope that each and everyone that's listening goes out and gets the book. So I think it will definitely help you be able to move forward in your life. And that's what it's all about. Well, listen, we're going to have to close the show, but I loved having you, Tricia. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you guys have a blessed day. And it's nice meeting all of you listeners.
Thank you so much. This is Cece with Going Solo. You are listening to WGSN-DB. Going Solo Network. I can't wait to be with you again, so hold tight. We'll be back soon. Bye for now.